to Classics Confidential. I'm here in Cambridge with Dr. Helen Lovatt from the University of Nottingham, who's going to tell us about some of her current work on classics and children's literature. Thanks for coming on Classics Confidential. And what kind of books are you looking at? Can you give us some titles?
Thanks very much for having me, Jess. Yeah, we're looking at quite a lot of different books across a number of periods. So this is an edited volume. I've also been, I'm working on mainly on the Roman Mysteries by Helen Lovatt.
Yeah, we've had Helen Lovatt on Classics Confidential a couple of times now.
Yeah, so both my kids have read them. I've read them all. They're brilliant. And the TV series as well. That's really interesting to see in different media. So I've been looking at that. I've also been looking at Harry Potter as well.
Yeah.
People are often rude about Harry Potter, but I think they are very, very interesting texts and also very readable as well. But other people in the edited collection are looking at lots of different things. We've also got some authors there as well. So Michael Cadnam was involved, and Owen Hodkinson's writing about him. And then there's stuff from the 19th century like Edward Lear, and there's also Rosemary Sutcliffe.
And are people doing things like illustrated versions of Greek myths as well as stories set in the ancient world, maybe fiction stories like Caroline Lawrence's? Yeah,
so we've got a really good piece on Aesop by Edith Hall, which is sort of very broad and covers all sorts of different children's receptions of Aesop, including illustrations, and also Deborah Roberts and Sheila Moynihan do some really interesting investigation into the sort of conflicting ways that the visual narratives are set against the receptions you get in the text.
Oh right, so the illustrations on the
illustrations are a lot darker than the words, so they're a lot more interesting and more complicated.
Oh wow. And in your work, what kinds of questions are you asking of the books that you're looking at?
Well, I'm quite interested, particularly Caroline Lawrence is writing very similar things to Lindsay Davis. So they're set in the same period, they're both writing detective fiction, but one's for children and one's for adults. So you've got a really clear example of writing for a different audience and what difference that makes. So that's quite interesting. I'm very interested also in education and power. So the way that children are a sort of oppressed minority and how they can use classics to sort of form their own world. And that's certainly, I think, that's how I read Harry Potter. The classical material in Harry Potter is very empowering and it provides a sort of escape. And you can use Latin to change the world in Harry Potter. So I think it's a really positive classical reception, although it also acknowledges the sort of darkness and difficulty of the classical material, particularly with the violence of the centaurs in Order of the Phoenix.
And is that this appropriation of power by children, is that something that's very much internal to the narratives, or do you see it as something that has a real world possibility as well? So children learning classics and then becoming more empowered in real life?
I think there is a crossover to real life, and I think Harry Potter probably has had an effect on recruitment for classics in a positive way, and it's a lot of, so we have a student in Nottingham who ran the Quidditch Society, for instance, so quite a lot of our students are involved in that, so I think it does give people a sort of cultural literacy which enables them to sort of join in with debates that they wouldn't be able to join in with otherwise.
We sometimes go and interview artists and writers, and it's amazing. Well, even our students, how many people's love of classics and interaction with the classics started off with something like the Usborne Book of Greek Myths when they were little, and it's something that they've then taken throughout their lives. Actually, maybe I could ask you what books you read when you were little, classics related.
Well, I definitely would have to mention C.S. Lewis. So the Narnia books have quite a lot of classical elements in them, and you love the Prince Caspian sort of backing progress. That is brilliant. I read a lot of things. I loved the Rosemary Sutcliffe books when I was a child, Eagle of the Ninth, that sort of thing. But I also read some quite weird things like Quo Vadis, which you wouldn't necessarily have expected a child to read. So I read a lot of things, and I was always quite fascinated by classics.
And do you reread these now to your own children, or see them read them?
A bit. Yeah, I also used to read Robert Graves' Greek Myths. I remember reading that in Latin lessons when I'd finished doing my other work and think it was amazing.
Mm.
Do I read? Yeah, I mean, I've read the Roman Mysteries with both of them, and I've read Harry Potter with both of them, and we've reread Narnia books. They love that, but they are sort of forming their own canon. I think children's literature is changing quite a bit, and it's interesting to see you get these lists of the 11 greatest children's literature books, and it's all stuff from the 1950s and before.
Yeah.
And
Enid Blyton.
yeah, exactly. And actually, people are interested in Percy Jackson. They're interested in Harry Potter, all the stuff that's been written in the last 10, 15 years.
And do you think those changing trends in children's literature, and particularly children's literature that's involved with classics, does that tell us things about our own society and our attitude to children in particular?
That's an interesting question and quite a difficult
one.
I
know, just throw that out there at the end.
But it probably does. I think there's a lot more emphasis on children as consumers. So children have power to buy things in a way that they didn't when we were young. And so the Percy Jackson books particularly play into that because they are really appealing. They're quite sort of anti-authoritarian,
right.
And very humorous and modernising classics in quite a radical way. So yeah, I think there's a bit more sort of child buying power than there was.
That's a very good answer to a difficult question. So no, that's great. Is there any other reason that you think it's really important for us to look at children's literature as academic classicists?
Yeah, I mean, I think children's literature is very revealing for a lot of reasons, and it's a neglected body of material. It hasn't been taken as seriously as it should have done. It's now, of course, a very big growth area in English studies and elsewhere. But children are very important for our future relationship with the discipline. So the thriving of classics is created by all the people who are reading and falling in love with classics nowadays. That's really important. And I also think childhood itself is quite an interesting and complex concept. So in the sense that popular culture is becoming something that people are engaging with a lot more. People are also engaging with childhood in the ancient world. So there's quite a lot of things to think about.
Well, it sounds like the edited volume is going to be really excellent, so we look forward to that, and thank you for telling us about your work.
Thanks very much for talking to me.